Well, a very good morning to you. It's Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. Welcome to it. This is AM Prime. We're coming down for this morning, this Tuesday morning. We tell you what's on the pike. We're continuing our discussion about the need for, or the perceived need for, a national consultation on crime in Trinidad and Tobago, given where we are. We're talking this morning with Pastor Winston Mansing. He's head of the Faith-Based Network in Trinidad, and Pastor Terence Bain. He's a member of the executive at the Tobago House of Assembly. He was a former government senator in the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We're also talking this morning with Dr. Angelique V. Nixon from CAISO. That's the Coalition Against Sexual Discrimination Against Sexual Orientation. And we're talking with her about the marking what is called the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. We get to that. And then, in our final segment, we're talking with Ms. Katrina Can Roberts. She's somebody called the Metrina Marine Minded Network. She wants to talk about how we treat the waters around us. And of course, we have the staples for you, the Newsday question and the poll, as well as other things in there. The COVID-19 numbers where we are this morning. But we begin with our discussion. We're continuing our discussion all this week. We began last Friday, asking from across the spectrum in Trinidad and Tobago, social, political activities, and the people who head them, what's their view on whether or not there should be a symposium on crime? What's their view on the state of crime in the country? It's not getting any better. A lot of people say Pastor Mansing and Pastor Bain is with us this morning. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, Pastor Mansing, let's start with you, because it's interesting that the Newsday question, the poll in the Newsday this morning is asking that question: what role should churches play in the fight against crime? So let's start with that. What do you think?
Unmute.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. My apologies.
Yes,
Good morning again to everyone. And the primary issue with crime and is an issue of the heart. You see, when we speak about crime from the faith perspective, we do acknowledge the sociological aspects of crime and influences and drivers of crime, the psychological aspect of it. These are all issues that are discussed. But there is a very significant aspect of spirituality and the influence of and the result of sin. So we speak of that as well, not denying the realities of the other aspects of it. And sometimes more emphasis is placed on one aspect or discussion than the other. So yes, from the churches and the faith community, I want to speak broader than just the churches, the faith community, but the primarily, as a pastor, I speak for, with an understanding of what goes on in the church. We are able to interact with people. There are many people, and Pastor Baines could be a witness to this, whose lives, who might have been heading in a particular direction, but their lives have been transformed because of the presence of Jesus Christ. And now the world continues to deny, and sometimes the church is called upon in seasons like this. But at the other seasons, when we are speaking about some of the transformational aspects of life and faith and so on, the church sometimes is pushed in a corner and they don't want to hear what the Bible has to say, what God has to say. God speaks about everything, Mr. Andy. He speaks about it. So yes, the church has a role, but I am calling on, I want the world to understand that you can't call on us only when you feel that you're drowning. There are things that we do, and when you examine our Christian community and so on, we are not exclusively and entirely free of some of the maladies of the day, but you would see that there is a great transformation positively that has taken place, and that has come because of the presence of God. So yes, the church has a role, but then that role must not be viewed in a very imbalanced manner from society, only when you feel that, as the elders say, there is water more than flour.
All right, thank you very much. We'll come back to that. We'll interrogate it a little more. But Pastor Baines, what's your position?
Good morning, Andy, and good morning to my venerable friend, Pastor Mansing. To me, religion in general, faith-based organizations have no use if they do not impact human behavior. And while we sometimes have some theological differences that run across the spectrum with the different religious or faith-based organizations that are in the space. I think I am sufficiently informed that the perspective of most faith-based organizations is to impact their members in a positive way, to have them interact with society, interact with their fellow men in a way that is not destructive and detrimental. And I think that we have to continue to support these organizations as long as we are sufficiently informed that they are doing something. Their mandate encompasses wholesome human behavior. I don't necessarily think, while I am a churchman, that the church may be the only faith-based organization that attempts to address human behavior in the society. You understand? And so wherever we see those efforts, we have to continue to support those efforts. And should we be doing more? Probably. Are we allowed to do more? That's another question.
Yes.
And I think Pastor Mansing is right that there are times that we can comment and we can make inputs on other issues in the society. We have our congregations are fortified with erudite minds, and we can make inputs on other issues. But we have a problem now. We are part of the society. We have a stake in the society. We are affected by crime and criminology, and therefore we have to play our role. And wherever we are in a kind of crisis space, or wherever we can get support, whoever is doing anything that is trying to improve human behavior, we have to support that.
Yeah, well, let's keep you there for the moment. So let's just get into that then. What do you think that you all will bring to this proposition as to whether or not there is need for a national conference on crime in the country?
Well, I mean, I believe any activity that will bring more minds to the table and look at different strategies and programs and so on, and to try and zero in on what is happening, I see that as something that is good. I don't know if all the advice that is given will be taken. That's another matter, because you would have churchmen like myself and Pastor Martin who say, this really is a matter of the heart more than anything else. You understand? And perhaps we need to look at that. Now, because of that has a kind of religious flavor to it. Not everybody may be willing to go that way. So you would have that aspect of the conversation, and then you would have those that will say that we need to do some more programs in the troubled communities. But we are finding now that crime is not endemic to troubled communities.
That's right.
Alone. You understand? So that perhaps gives credence to the question. It is a matter of a human heart, no matter where the human being is. You understand? Although there are some communities that are prone to certain types of behavior because of the social dynamics of the community, and we agree on that as well. So I don't know that a symposium is going to hurt, you understand, because in a symposium you would have more information and a greater cross-section of minds throwing up the different concerns and different perhaps ideas as to how we can get this problem solved. But I think what we have to come to the table with is with a commitment that we have to do whatever we need to do to get the thing fixed when we bring these ideas together.
All right, thank you very much, Pastor Mansing.
Yes, well, Mr. Andy and Pastor Baines, there's always opportunity for learning, and in the scripture says, in the multitude of counselors there is safety. And we do appreciate that. But one of the questions I have is, can we determine from the various symposia that were held in past and some even on crime and domestic violence, etc., of the findings presented, if they actually came to findings or just had discussions, what was implemented? You see, Pastor Baines, Mr. Andy, and to our listening audience, over the years, the faith community has been engaged, and when I say faith community, not only the Christian faith community,
Right.
all, because we work together, my colleagues, the IRO and others, and so we work together. In fact, I can say that Pandit Mukram Sirju, the present president of the IRO, and Imam Imtiaz Ali and I, three of us, we work closely together on a number of issues. But coming back, what were the findings, and can we determine what percentage of those findings were actually implemented, and how was it monitored and evaluated to determine the effectiveness of it, and so on, and as maybe in some areas some strategies may be more effective. I am sometimes concerned, Pastor Baines and Mr. Andy, and to our listening audience, at the amount of time spent and money in conducting symposia and discussions and consultations, and nothing comes out of it. Nothing comes out of it. I mean, we gather minutes, we gather notes, and waste a whole lot of money and time. And this has been ongoing. And every time there's a spike, we call, let's have consultation, let's do this. And it is a sort of mind game that is played with the community. And we must hold our executive and our national leaders and those who are the drivers of what should be implemented. We the people need to, there must be some mechanism to hold them accountable of timely implementation, and also monitoring and evaluating of the effective strategies and sometimes the demographics, etc., that require specialized intervention and so on. So I am willing to support Mr. Andy a consultation, because as I said, you glean from one another. But we have had many such discussions over the years, and what has been implemented, we cannot tell.
All right. In some cases, laws have been passed. You know, I'm working on the history of what led to the promulgation of the anti-gang legislation, for instance. In a lot of cases, social programs have been designed, some set to work, some exploded midair. If we want to talk about live sport, there were these programs such as Color Me Orange. There was the establishment of the Citizen Security program. Now we're talking about reviving the youth camp experience and doing things about national service and so on. These things were meant to address crime in one way or the other. Laws have been passed to go after what is called the big fish, Pastor Baines. And these things
we have not gone after. I mean, we are talking about laws that have been passed, but let's look at the detection of crime, and also the judgment, right? And I think, I mean, those things are yes, okay, but you are not seeing the fruits of it. We need to address this from the judicial system as well. We need to improve the judiciary. We need to get the detection of the police service up and so on. And I also want to say, in fairness to the police and the judiciary, they can't be, as someone said, and I want to be careful, in everybody's houses or so to protect. So we in the faith community must work and try to address the issue of the heart and teach people about their relationships, etc., the other NGOs and so on. Then we must deal with the aspect of criminality in terms of crime detection and the law, and then the policing aspect of it as well, in collaboration with the social restorative projects that can help to give hope. To give hope. It's a holistic thing, but sometimes, I want to be honest, I feel governments over the years have dropped the ball, that they have sought to have banners and plasters to say something is available, but there was nothing that was, strategically implemented and built upon.
All right, I mean, Pastor Baines, what's your position on that? Have we been failing?
Yes, well, we really have no control. A forum like we're trying to set up, we have no control over policy making and so on. Those things will be left up to the administration and so on.
Yeah.
But I think that particularly from a faith-based organizational standpoint, we have to perhaps drill down a little more because of the gravity of the situation now, and try to do more programs to try and impact the people that we find laid at our charge, whatever the faith-based organization is. And we have been doing a considerable amount of work over the years. And the society, the dynamics have changed. We know we have an issue with the judiciary and all the other arms of society that are supposed to work. We are not in a perfect situation. But the issue really is about human behavior in individual places. So and Pastor Mansing is right, and as others have agreed, that you really can't police everybody. You can't police everybody every time. You understand? So there has to be perhaps an influence upon a life that will help an individual or individuals that may be facing a situation that can turn out to be something that will result in criminal activity, will result in some kind of behavior, taking some kind of action that will do injury to another person. Something about the influence of faith-based organization on that life that helps that person to make another decision. It is not that people do not get angry. It is not that people do not get frustrated. It is not that people are not mistreated. It is not that people are not exposed to activities that will cause the average man to react in a particular way. But we are hopeful that the impact of faith-based messages will help you to make another type of decision in that situation. I think that is one of the ways that we can ensure, not ensure, but we can contribute to perhaps lessening the activities, lessening the incidents rather of crime that we see. So there is a role that the faith-based organizations have to continue to play. And I think as we are in this situation now, and whenever these spikes come up, yes, we are accentuated, we are called upon and so on. But we have to play the role because we are impacted by it as well.
All right. So what? All right. So
yes.
What to what extent what we're talking about here is consistent with the decision in Tobago to set up this new faith-based network, of which you are the coordinator or the chairman?
Well, I am just the secretary for community development, youth, and sport.
Right. In the DHM.
And this faith-based forum falls under my purview, under our division. So it is run by this group of people. I am just an ex-officio member, pretty much, and so on. But I have to say that when I had the idea, it was not directly related to trying to treat the crime, although that will be included in the mandate. But I felt that faith-based organizations were used all the time in politicking and political activity and so on, and elections and so on. And then after the organizations got into power, they didn't get the kind of consistent, predictable support from the same organization to help them carry out their mandate. So I felt that because faith-based organization play such a critical role in the society, even in the politics at a particular time, that it was reasonable to have some kind of governmental support to assist them in carrying out their mandate and so on. So that was my thinking at the time. And that would, of course, included all the ills of society, of which crime and those things is one of those issues. So the members understand the role that they have to play in presiding over applications that will be made to them by individual faith-based organizations to help them with their mandate and program. they would also be there as minds to help guide some of the things that that will be priority issues, as crime is one, and so on. And that is a conversation that we are having in Tobago and will continue to have, and all of us are concerned about it.
All right, Pastor Mansingh. So you think it's necessary for the various representatives of the estates in the realm to come together once more to decide what to do, maybe to go back and pull out the plans and the blueprints that are there to do the things that maybe were said that we will do to address the situation? This call comes from the laments of people in the business sectors in various parts of the country, lamenting what they see as the government's silence with increasing crime.
Well, yes, let's go back to the table. Let's take what was there and build on it. Let's improve it, and let's recognize and let's all share responsibility. From the faith community, we will continue to do. I know of many intervention programs that are ongoing even now, that are treating with the issues of family life and so on. And, we will continue to do our part, but the most powerful tool and weapon we have, I shouldn't use the word weapon in a discussion like this.
Yeah.
The most powerful tool we have in addressing this situation from our faith is our prayer. Jesus said men ought always to pray, and James said the effective prayer of a righteous man avails much. To the nation, I want to make a commitment. We have been praying very, very much for you, and we will continue to do so. But yes, we are willing to go back to the table. We are identifying that there are some gaps, and we hope that when we go back to the table, as Pastor Bain said, that it is not a situation where we just come now and then we are not followed up with on how things are being done. We want to see a better Trinidad and Tobago. I empathize, and I want to offer condolences on behalf of the faith community to all those families who have been affected by this, especially, Mr. Andy, the children. The children. But in closing, the faith community is called upon to serve, and we will do so. When it comes to policy, sometimes we are the last to be engaged. And the least to be listened to. Because, the late Rashoti, I said, we push the Creator out. Some of the policies that are being brought to the nation right now, even through education and so on, will destroy the true human soul as it relates to sexuality and so on. But we're not talking about that. Our government isn't speaking about that. The comprehensive sexuality education will destroy our young people. And we may, and your speakers coming after me may not be so pleased that I am saying that and some of the things, but they've got their work to do and I've got mine, and I'm not going to be silent because they have an agenda.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say that? That what is the comprehensive what will destroy?
The comprehensive sexuality education that is being driven, that is meant to sensualize and sexualize our children and to push an agenda that is against God's moral position. Now, you may not be of my faith and so on, but here's what: there is a common sense approach to life. There is a place that takes in, and there's a place that takes out. And we've got to understand the use of all of them. There is, when you go to the comprehensive sexuality education policy and things like this, so these things have a negative impact on the psychological being of these children and so on, because it is orienting them in a different direction. These are some of the things that we do not want to address, and people become upset with us in the faith community when we speak about the moral positions. But when we continue to move the finish line and the boundaries further and further away from the truth, we are going to end up at some point in time with a depraved, destroyed society, and then we want to call the faith-based and say, do this, and we will, because we love humanity. We cannot not respond. We must. But I'm saying to our nation's leaders, and I'm saying to the people out there who are pushing these agendas that are against God's moral law, we do not hate you. Rather, we empathize with you, and we are saying, please, let's listen to the truth. Listen to the truth. So the policies sometimes that we make are bearing fruits that our nation cannot eat.
And you're saying
Ladies
that,
and gentlemen,
yeah, and you're saying
let
that
us
there's a
turn away
connection
from these things
and
that
there's
are ungodly.
and you're saying there's a direct connection between those things and the commission of crime or the committal of crime by some young people or by people generally.
Well, you see, Mr. Andy, we go back to some statistics from years ago. And I had this research some years ago, and I can't name the source, so I'm very careful, I'm sorry.
Right.
But when we looked at some of the issues as it relates to sexuality and pornography and so on, etc., and I'm not saying that we must blame pornography for everything, but these things had some kind of impact on the behavior of people, even on those who perpetrated crimes like rape and murder of their victims and so on. There is a linkage to it. I remember that well when we were doing some early work in the area of HIV and AIDS and trying to understand it. I remember that it stuck with me. Now we can go back and look at try to get the research, etc. The point I'm making, when we create an environment through policy and through orientation of the minds of persons that is highly sensualized and sexualized, we will have some of that played out in the future. And it when a man who is married to a woman and you're faithful and you're looking, you've married this nice lady and you after 3-4 children, she's no longer the Coca-Cola shape and so on, but you are feeding your minds on the negatives that exist out there. You bring back things to the home and an expectation that is unreal, and we are orienting our society on policies that are driven for a sensualized human being.
All right, you're making a connection. It's not entirely sort of not understandable, but there are people who would say, well, there's one thing to deal with on the question of morality, and there's another thing to deal with on the question of crime. But you're making a connection, which it's at least it's a point for discussion. But Pastor Bain, what would be your last word on this? And we're talking about active crime and how to treat with it if we have to put all those things into consideration.
Well, again, and at the risk of sounding repetitious, I mean,
nothing wrong with that.
We have to continue to try and affect the heart of and affect the heart of a man in a positive way that will help that man, and I'm using man in the generic sense, to make proper decisions that will not do harm to his fellow men when he is faced with some of the realities of life, which all humans are exposed to. You understand? We are not, all of us are not reared in a perfect home environment. So you have different issues. You have, and some of the influences that are in the space contribute to behavior. I don't necessarily want to say that it's an excuse, because every man has to give account for his or her behavior, but there are contributors in this space, just as influences that may be negative can contribute to negative behavior. I think positive influences are supposed to contribute to positive behavior. We do not, as I said earlier, we do not have control over what kind of policies a government may implement. What I will hope is that when governments call upon faith-based organizations and so on, that they will respect the organization enough to say, okay, to give credence to the organization, to help the organization carry out its mandate. You understand? Giving whatever support that the organizations, that government can give to organizations to carry out that mandate, to make them an equal partner in the fight against crime, because crime is what we're talking about now, and to recognize the voice of the organization that you have asked to be at the table. You understand? I think that is a critical point. We are going to continue, and I say we as faith-based organizations, to continue to teach our people and to encourage our people to behave properly in society. You understand? Yeah. We have several differences on the perspective of the great beyond.
Yes.
But we're going to deal with that after. We are dealing with where we are here now in the space, and I believe that our messages has to be optimized And we will spend more time talking about our family issues, talking about rearing our children, talking about the education of our children and so on, and all these things with the goal to help our members to make better decisions as it relates to the interface with other human beings. I think that is our biggest challenge. And for me, I mean, Pastor Mansing and I, we are in the same Christian community, and we understand that the Christian teachings have no use. They have no use if they do not impact how we behave physically in the space.
Right.
You understand? And so I think, and by extension, the other faith-based organizations, I think from what I have seen, all faith-based organizations have this common thread that they want to see members behave in a way that can be considered wholesome and decent as it relates to their fellow men.
All right.
That we would not do injury to each other.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, Pastor Terence Bain and Pastor Winston Mansing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We tell you we will continue this discussion for the rest of this week. The mandate for, or seeking a mandate for, a national symposium, a national consultation on crime in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we're talking with Dr. Angelique V. Nixon on the question of discrimination in a lot of respects, phobias, as she put it, looking at more understanding and inclusion of more people in Trinidad and Tobago. Stay with us.
North Coast Jazz 2022. Day 2, Event 2. The big day is Family Saturday. And the biggest stars are performing on festival grounds. Michelle Sylvester, Ruel Lynch, Patrick Gordon, Adam Hagley featuring Tony Paul, Leandra Head, Johan Chuckery, Sharon Phillips, Freetown Collective, powered by festival band Dean Williams and Company. Each master talent will perform a song from Lord Nelson's wide catalogue. Saturday, Family, May 28th. Together again. Festival grounds, Blanchisseurs. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, played here.
Get your tickets now at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Sangre Grande, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Digicel Trin City and C3 Malls, and Digicel Head Office, 11C Maraval, WESN, 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516. Change your fate! Start to win at life with $20,000 every month. Win $20,000 every month for 20 years with NLCB's newest game, Win for Life. 6 numbers from 28 plus the cash ball could make you win for life. You deserve a win. Play Win for Life today. Visit NLCBGames.com for details. Players must be 18 years and over. Please play responsibly.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
All right, so welcome back to the program. Let's take a quick run through the news. Well, before we get there, the poll numbers this morning, the COVID numbers this morning, where we stand in the categories: totally recovered patients, 142,244. The total active positive cases, 9,262. The death toll to this point, 3,878. 155,384. That's the total positive cases reported in the country since we began the counting on March 12, 2020. 344, the new positive cases reported in the 24 hours up to the end of the day yesterday, and 204. That's the number of persons in hospital in the parallel healthcare system dealing with COVID-19. So those are the numbers on this day, March 17, 2022. Let's look at the news day, the question and the responses, and it's in keeping with our discussion this morning. It's about what role can churches play in helping to deal with the crime situation in the country. These are the responses. Religious bodies have a duty and a responsibility to encourage their members not to bring children into the world without first having a good family structure and framework in which to raise them. A lot of the crimes nowadays can be traced back to single-parent homes, especially those with the father absent or non-involved, and the single moms too overworked and stressed out to make much of a difference. Nobody can stop crime. Charity begins at home. That's another response. What role do parents have in their children's upbringing? That's another response, a question coming out of the question we asked about what role can the churches play in treating with crime in the society. So those are the responses to that question, and fits in with our discussion as we began the program this morning. Well, it is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. What are those things? Well, to tell us about that, Dr. Angelique V. Nixon, she's head of the organization called CAISO. Let's see if I get it right. The Coalition Advocating for Inclusion and Sexual Orientation. Was that correct?
Good morning, Andy.
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, our name, CAISO, is certainly known. We started with an acronym, but now we are CAISO Sex and Gender Justice.
Yeah, I somehow, I didn't quite get what you were saying there.
Good morning, Andy.
Yes, I heard that, but go ahead.
We are CAISO, Sex and Gender Justice.
All right.
The coalition advocating, that was an older name, but now we are CAISO Sex and Gender Justice. We've going under a new name since 2016.
Yeah. So you're campaigning now against what you call homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. So that is it's a national, an international kind of platform.
Yes, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia was actually created in 2004 to draw attention to the violence and discrimination experienced by lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and intersex people, and all other people with diverse sexual orientations, gender identities or expressions, and sex characteristics. The day, Ida Hobbit, as it's commonly called, was spearheaded by the Martinican who began the date. Jorge Luis Tin, the date May 17th, was specifically chosen because it commemorates the World Health Organization's decision in 1990 to declassify homosexuality as a mental disorder. So that's why it's this date, May 17th. And it was first celebrated in Trinidad and Tobago in 2011, and the day is marked in more than 130 countries. This year, the global theme is our bodies, our lives, our rights.
And I will expand on that. What does that mean? What does one looking in on it take from that? Our bodies, our lives, our
rights.
Yes.
Well, for us in Trinidad and Tobago and for CAISO, I think what's important is that as we think about Ida Hubbard, we call upon the government once again to meet its human rights obligations, to be as inclusive as possible and protect all people living in Trinidad and Tobago, specifically from harm and discrimination. What it means for us is that there are still a lack of protections afforded to LGBTQI plus people, and there are few avenues for accessible or meaningful redress. And on this day, what CAISO wants to bring forward is that we have been, for the last year and a half, responding to violations that are experienced by LGBTQI plus people and communities. What do we mean by violations? We understand violations as any breach of human rights, any infringement on safety, and any impediment to public services. And so we offer some of these services and navigation through our Wholeness and Justice program. So Andy, you asked, why is this important? Because even though decriminalization happened in 2018, we still await the appeal process it's going through. And even with that change, we still have legislation in terms of law in Trinidad and Tobago that explicitly excludes sexual orientation, such as the Equal Opportunity Act. And we also have no protections enshrined in our policies and practices and also in law that enable protection on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And these are meaningful changes that we absolutely need. As many of us who work on LGBTQI rights and justice, that we see working on multiple fronts through legal policy changes, as well as the work we do to advance social justice and transformation.
You said the Equal Opportunity Commission is deficient in the provisions for protection of sexual orientation?
That is correct. The Equal Opportunity Act describes sex, as does not include sexual orientation. So it's actually a piece of anti-discrimination legislation that's been identified well since 2011, and even before that as something that actively discriminates. So it's been highlighted across international human rights reviews as a piece of legislation, while being really important and doing so much good work and allowing protections for people and people to access those services for free through the commission and the tribunal. It explicitly excludes sexual orientation. And this is why CAISO and other organizations, human rights organizations, women's organizations, a broad range for our campaign to amend the Equal Opportunity Act, which we've been calling for over a decade. The Equal Opportunity Commission itself has asked for amendments to the Act.
Right, because there was a matter that was in the public space not too long ago in which I think the head of the commission was seen as not as enthusiastic as her office suggested she might be on a matter, and the matter was just left there to languish. And is it because of the shortcomings in the legislation which governs how she operates? Was that the case?
Well, that case was particularly interesting because the person who filed the case did so on the basis of sexual harassment, that they were harassed on the basis of sex, and it had actually nothing to do with sexual orientation. And the case was actually turned away, saying that, this was about sexual orientation, and the person had to argue, and the commission also supported that process. And so now that case is going forward, in fact, on the basis of sex. And it is also the case for sexual harassment, that it should not matter what your sexual orientation is. If you're being harassed for any reason, you should be able to seek redress. And so now sexual harassment cases are going to be heard through the tribunal. And it also gives us some precedents that, hopefully conversations and the advancement of including sexual orientation in the act will move forward. We look forward to that and we hope for it. But in the meantime, Andy, people are experiencing challenges in employment. Right now, you could be fired for being gay, queer, lesbian, trans without any redress. You can be denied health care. You could be denied access to education or housing.
In Trinidad,
and so these are serious concerns, especially for people who are working class, people who might not have connections or networks. And, LGBTQI plus people disproportionately experience different kinds of exclusions and marginalization in our society and indeed globally.
You say you could be, let's talk about Trinidad and Tobago. You say you could be in jeopardy if you belong to one of these groups. But are there cases where people, in fact, are denied opportunity?
Absolutely, yes. And in particular, this is why the Wholeness and Justice program was started by CAISO. We wanted to respond to these violations. And so we created this program and we developed basically a clinical approach and a legal approach to supporting people. That's why we call it Wholeness and Justice. What we wanted to do was offer LGBTQI plus communities and people access to both, how do you take care of yourself, as well as the legal and the access to justice and legal support needed. And we have the reason the program started was because we had communities come to us, people who experienced being kicked out of a rental agreement. We got reports of people being harassed at work for being gay or lesbian or queer or trans. And we have reports of people being fired from work or being harassed so much that they had to leave the job. We also have this situation where trans people might not have access to different kinds of employment because of their gender identity and expression. And so there's so many different challenges for people who are attempting, to find jobs or secure housing. The other issue that we hear about often is that young people being rejected from their homes, not accepted by families, and experiencing houselessness, experiencing challenges of, being able to find a secure, safe housing. And so that remains a perpetual challenge. And one of the things that we have done, we've been offering full services for over a year, and we've produced a report that we are launching today for Ida Hobbit. We are calling it our Wholeness and Justice Insights Report for 13 months from December 2020 to December 2021, where we show and analyze our experiences with clients. And of course, all of our services are private and confidential, and so we have to share the information in that way. And also, we want to show, what we've learned, the lessons learned. So we have key findings that we are presenting today in our media conference at 10 a.m., which will be live streamed on the CAISO Facebook page.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a fair enough sense, at least a working understanding of what homophobia means. When you talk about transphobia and biphobia, can you just translate it for the uninitiated?
Yes. Well, I think most people would be aware of homophobia. And I think, in its translation, we understand it as a fear of people who are not straight. But it's not just a quote unquote fear, but it's actually the ways that institutionally and socially people might be discriminated against on the basis of their sexual orientation. Biphobia is a word that's been used to understand how people who are bisexual might experience unique kinds of marginalization or discrimination because people don't understand bisexuality or people don't understand homosexuality, right, or not being straight. For trans people who are trans are folks who do not identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. And for people who are trans, who have a gender identity that might not align and that don't align with how they were assigned at birth, they experience so much specific kinds of marginalization, outward discrimination, and acts of violence, because we exist in a world and in a societies that are very much about the gender binary, that are like, you're either a man or a woman. We don't understand gender as fluid. And the fact is that gender is. People express gender in all kinds of ways. So transphobia helps us to understand when someone is discriminated against or experiences forms of violence or marginalization based on their gender identity or gender expression.
Yeah. And so the news conference is in a little while from now.
It's at 10 a.m., yes.
All right. And go ahead.
Oh, yes, it's at 10 a.m. and we've invited the media to join us. We will be on Zoom, but we invite the public, please, to join us at 10 a.m. on the CAISO page. And of course, the report, our Wholeness and Justice report, will be available on our website and launched across our social media and shared with stakeholders. So if you are interested, of course, please contact CAISO. You can check out our website, kaisott.org. and find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we are happy to share this information. And we're hoping that the media will share information from the report. And, we're using this day to really call for change. We build upon our longstanding efforts with other LGBTQI organizations in Trinidad and Tobago and human rights organizations that we are continuously calling for and asking for protection and inclusion. And what CAISO's Wholeness and Justice program does is that we're filling in gaps. There are deep gaps and glaring gaps in terms of legislation, policies, and social services. And what this report reveals to us is the everyday institutional and social discrimination and lack of access to freedoms and protections that LGBTQI plus people experience living in Trinidad and Tobago. And Wholeness and Justice attempts to meet those gaps and to offer support for people who are going through different kinds of challenges. One of the things that we also do is that we understand that seeking legal redress can be very difficult. And what we've found is that for the majority of clients who've come to us for a legal consultation, they are fearful of going through legal action. They're fearful of retribution. They are fearful that they will experience more hurt and harm in the process because it doesn't feel as if there's enough protection in the legal system. There's no faith in the judicial system. And frankly, that's not surprising. Many people don't have access to justice in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we at Wholeness and Justice understand the intersecting ways and interlocking ways that people experience multiple forms of marginalization based on not only sexual orientation and gender identity, but also class and race and gender.
We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much, Dr. Angelique V. Nixon, on this issue. So 10 a.m., the news conference, and more to come out of it. Thank you very much. All right, so we take a break. We have the news at the top of the hour. We continue after that with a discussion with Katrina Can Roberts. We tell you what it's about, marine-mindedness and marine-minded networking. Stay with us.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
North Coast Jazz 2022. Day 2, Event 2. The big day is Family Saturday. And the biggest stars are performing on festival grounds. Michelle Sylvester, Ruel Lynch, Patrick Gordon, Adam Hagley featuring Tony Paul, Leandra Head, Johan Chuckery, Sharon Phillips, Freetown Collective, powered by festival band Dean Williams and Company. Each master talent will perform a song from Lord Nelson's wide catalogue. Saturday, Family, May 28th. Together again. Festival Grounds, Blanchisseurs. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby, St. James, Extra Food Tarima, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Extra Food Sagre Grande, Digicel, Trin City and Gulf City Malls, WESN, 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this is a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to the program. Well, Dr. Emmeline Pierre, or Ms. Emmeline Pierre, she's the Minister of Education in Grenada, and she's been making some noise about where she sees school fees going, where they're at now and where they're going. And she says that ought not to be the case to get an education in Grenada. We have a look at that from the Grenada Broadcasting Network.
We have said that the number of fees that are charged to students in school are illegal because the law says what should happen as it relates to school fees. Education is still supposed to be free. Education is still supposed to be a right of every citizen of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique.
That was Minister for Education Emmeline Pear speaking out on the issue of school fees in Grenada, saying that despite various discussions with the various schools, they still went ahead and increased fees without taking the proper steps. She explained that asking parents to pay a certain amount of money for graduation fee, whether or not the student goes to the ball, is outrageous and does not settle well with government.
We have started to take the steps to address and to regularize the issue of school fees in Grenada. Every school cannot decide on their own how much they charge poor people, children, to enter school. It must be regularized. And it's not just it must be, it will be regularized under NNP administration. The consultation has ended. And your government is about to make a decision in the interest of parents of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique.
The minister says that in recent times, the government has been blamed for the increase in fees on political platforms to create chaos between parents and the government.
But I say tonight, nobody must use this subject as a political football, trying to give the impression that school fees are determined by the Cabinet of Grenada. This is absolutely false. Because some people who feel they're bright and they're smart are giving the impression that parents must come out and protest. Everything is protest because we want to create disorder in this country. Things are going too well.
All right, well, with us now, Ms. Katrina Can Roberts. We'll tell you about something called the Matrina Marine Minded Network. She's also a published author. We'll see how much of that we can get into the discussion. But Matrina Marine Minded Network. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So my name is Katrina Can Roberts, and I'm an author and scientist from Trinidad and Tobago. So Matrina Marine Minded Network all began when I was around 6 years old, and I loved mermaids and I loved the ocean, and I always wanted to be a marine biologist. And you know, as you grow up, you realize that those dreams sometimes need a little bit of a difference when it comes to you know, the reality of the situation. So while I did my life's work of going into the environmental field, volunteering, and you know, trying to find a career within Trinidad and Tobago in the environmental field, I learned a lot about, you know, what there is and what there isn't. So it's very difficult to find jobs in Trinidad and Tobago, far less for someone with an environmental background. So we have to create our own opportunities. And so because of the pandemic and because of a whole lot of other factors, I decided to stay at home with my son. And from there, the idea came about to embrace my technical capacity as well as my love for mermaids and my creativity. And it all started with actually writing some children's books. So I wrote 2 children's books with the character of Matrina, the Mini Marine Biologist Guidebook and the Mini Marine Biologist Activity Book. And then from there, I thought about how am I going to impart all the things that I've learned for the younger generation to, you know, embrace it. So it's something that's growing. It started off with these books. It's going to end, I don't know where. But yeah, it's exciting because on Saturday we actually had an event called the Mermaid Expo TT. So that was all part of, you know, the idea.
I want to get into that a little bit, the Mermaid Expo TT and how you come up with this name, Matrina. It seems as though you are combining stuff about the marine environment and part of your name, but we'll get to that in a moment. But you say that for somebody with what would be called your skill set, it's difficult to get a job in Trinidad and Tobago as a marine biologist, and there's so much work to be done in that area.
So my background is actually in environmental resource management, marine biology, zoology, health and safety, and I have a master's in tourism with a specialty in natural resource management for small island developing states. So I've been doing a lot of like consulting and stuff like that over the years while working in oil and gas manufacturing for HSE. So it's been quite a ride for the past 15 years, and I have been volunteering in many different organizations. So currently I am part of the Council of Presidents for the Environment. We are an umbrella environmental NGO, and we basically try to bring the voice of the environmental NGOs to government-led activities and stuff like that. So my capacity is quite broad, and I have started off as youth volunteerism and advocacy as well. But going back to the name, it was actually my cousin Nadia Ali when I was about 6, and I was swimming in Torbay in Tobago. I wanted to be a mermaid, so I started swimming like a mermaid, and she is the one that created Mer-Trina. So mermaid and Katrina come together to make Mer-Trina. That's why the name happened.
Yeah. So were you in Glasgow a couple of months ago?
No, I was not. I decided that I'm staying at home for my son, so I'm not going to be traveling anytime soon on any of those escapades. I've had my share of it, and I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think that it's what we can do on the ground that really matters, I think.
So you don't think that the ambitions coming out from there are important for us to get more deeply involved in?
Extremely. They're extremely important for the governments, because that is for the conference of the parties. That is for the governments to come up with their programming then for the next few years in the face of climate crisis. So that is actually what I'm working on right now. I'm working with an organization called the Caribbean Climate Network for the next few months. And we're trying to increase adaptation as the agenda item for the governments of the Caribbean, especially with nature-based solutions, because I believe that, nature has all these solutions already. Why is it that we have to do hard engineering and all these things that are not sustainable in the long term? Because nature is the long term. And of course, we can't survive without nature. But the Conference of the Parties is very important, and it is very important for people like us who care about the environment to lobby for our governments to make the right decisions, because it's going to affect our children and grandchildren.
So let's talk about the nature-based solutions, and what are some of them?
So nature-based solutions include things like protecting areas that are natural. It could be restoring places that are natural, like mangroves, for example. What I mean by protecting is, you have legislation in Trinidad that protects certain areas. So like we have the Ramsar sites that protect wetlands, like the Caroni Swamp and the River Swamp and the Bucco Bonaccord Complex. Those are 3 of the major wetland protected areas in the world, actually. And, things like people squatting and, forest fires that are set, and of course, this development that may affect long-term, environmental processes. Those are the things that we have to look at when we're looking at sustainable natural solutions. So yeah, those are just some examples.
and where you see some of those those things being violated and being used in ways that they ought not to be in Trinidad.
A lot of ideas come to mind, and the problem is not necessarily one particular body or person. It's not necessarily the public. It's not necessarily the government. It is, though, the responsibility of the people who are in that area, the community. If they see something happening that is not supposed to be happening in their environment, that is why we're supposed to encourage communities to get on board with environmental protection and have education in school as to why the environment is so important. We need the air, we need the trees, we need all the environmental services, water purification. If it is that it rains and we have only hard concrete surfaces, we are going to have flooding because it's going to overcharge our water courses. And if our water courses are blocked, we're not going to have enough water getting into our wetlands, if we have too much processed water with chlorine and fluorine and all these heavy metals and stuff, it's going to affect the food that we eat in. So it's a lot of different complex interactions that may not be able to explain at this short space of time.
Well, no, go ahead, because we in deficit, my term, as to how we should be treating with the environment.
Definitely. Okay, so an example is, where we have a protected animal. Let's just say a leatherback sea turtle or something like that, right? Yeah. That turtle nests on a certain beach. So natural processes are happening that are causing that beach to erode, right? But if we build a hotel on that beach, that is going to cause different kind of environmental impact in that it could affect how the water flows to that beach, and that could affect how the sand is accumulating on that beach, and it could affect the chemical composition of the water in the area. It could have tourists going into areas that are, where the turtles would usually be. It could be anything. I'm just talking off of the top of my head for scenarios that could or could not be. That is why we have our Environmental Management Act, and we have our different organizations that manage the environment. We have a lot of organizations that both do environmental testing and surveying and checking on these animals and plants and organisms and the whole ecosystem, and creating data sets so that we then can make proper planning and decisions for the development of the human aspect of things. So it's all about working in tandem with nature, because like I said, my master's is actually in tourism, right? Tourism has both pros and cons, but I believe that it does have sustainable tourism and ecotourism, which is like, the marriage of all these things together. You want to make sure that everybody is happy. You want to make sure that the country is receiving income for its people and developing its people. And you also want to protect the environment. Yeah. So that's just my ideas.
We're talking, you say on a particular beach, these things happen. You're talking Grand River, you're talking beaches in Toku, you're talking Blanchishes in some cases.
I'm talking about all, and including Tobago. So it is all over. It is all over. Yes.
What would your position have been on the question of the big what would we say, the international brand that was being proposed for Tobago? What was your position on the discussions around that, and your position on the fact that the people pulled out after a while? They figured there were too many negatives about it.
This is with regard to sandals.
Yes.
So my position on it was that if it is that you're going to have development in any area, you have to have environmental assessments done. And if it is that it finds that nothing is wrong and you can go ahead with the development and it is sustainable, by all means you can. But you have to remember that the natural environment has more benefits to it, in my opinion, than a built area. Because, like I said, we have natural goods and services that we take from our environment without even realizing it sometimes. So to replace a healthy wetland ecosystem with something that is completely hard engineering, concrete, and you cut down all the trees and you're not protecting any of the natural facilities then that you had in that area, it is going to have a detrimental long-term effect. But if it is that you build with nature, now there are lots of examples elsewhere in the Caribbean as well, not even worldwide, where you can build with nature and you can have a tourism product that is not going to have a huge footprint. So it's not going to have a huge energy footprint in terms of, consumption of energy. You can go not off the grid, of course, because our legislation does not allow us to be off the grid. But you can supplement your energy with renewable energies, or even just have a low energy product. It's very hard because we are so accustomed to our low energy prices in Trinidad. We are so we just consume like crazy. We don't realize it sometimes, but in other islands, you have to turn off the lights when you leave the room. You have to turn off your water heater. You have to turn off your pump. We don't think about it in Trinidad, but the day of the blackout, it really showed how much we depend on our energy, because if we were at a loss at night, we could. I mean, I don't think anyone even had the like flashlights and stuff ready, because we've been so like, I don't know, blessed in this place to have cheap energy. So it really does give us a little take for granted situation. So back to the point, it is just that you have to remember that you are dependent on your environment, as well as, you know, your environment is dependent on you.
Yeah. So what's your position as to where we at with treating with this issue about alternative energy sources? Because on the other side of it, there are people saying this is what we have is our natural endowment, and we should make the best of it. We shouldn't snare the fact that we produce fossil fuels and so on.
Agreed. So I have worked in the fossil fuel industry as a health and safety and environmental professional for most of my career, actually.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, natural resources such as oil and gas, yes. You take up the opportunities when they come to you, and you are able to create wealth and prosperity for your people. The main issue that I find with it is one, that we have aging infrastructure in Trinidad, and we don't have enough budget allocated to maintenance. We want to continue to have our prosperity, but yet we're not planning ahead for the long term, because we are continually exploring for more fossil fuels while the world is trying to move towards the renewable. Now, we had an opportunity as well to try and make things a little bit better, because currently we use natural gas as our main source for energy production, right, for electricity. If it is that we could do what we say we're going to do and start looking into creating more avenues where we can do something truly renewable, it would be excellent. Like if we could reduce our carbon in certain ways, there are so many different strategies that you could employ. So it's either that you find a new source, or you find a way to offset your footprint. So the footprint, what I mean by the footprint is like when you use something, that is how much you're using of it, right? But everything in the world is a give and take, even in life, right? So we know that we have to give as much as we're taking. And every time that we use our cars, we're going to be polluting our environment because we're burning this fossil fuel that was in the ground, stored as carbon. It's called carbon sequestration, right?
Yeah.
So we had this carbon that was locked into this liquid form, and we're now burning it so that it's in the air. And when it's in the air, that is where it causes climate change, because the air is now getting more concentrated with carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all the different carbon forms, soot, and all of these things. When that happens, the air is becoming like a blanket on the earth and becoming more susceptible to rising the world's temperatures. So that is basically how climate change works. It is the specific, climate change and climate vulnerability, climate change is different to the normal climate change that happens naturally.
Right.
Climate change that we define now is the human aspect of climate change, is where we are actually contributing through our activities to cause climate change. Now, if a volcano erupts, that is natural, right? So that will be climate change in a natural way. They call that climate variability.
Right.
But we are causing climate change, which is an unnatural process because of human activities. So, I mean, back to the point about the renewable energy system, I think that it is worth looking into. We need to start doing it now rather than later, because eventually, fossil fuels are being phased out right now. So we have to look into our alternatives before it's too late and we're left behind again.
So where are some of the alternatives for us? What are the opportunities, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, and so on? What do you see happening there or not happening that should be happening for us?
Well, I see that we have a lot of companies that are coming up for many years, with the technology and with the research and stuff like that. So I know that there's proposed to have a solar farm somewhere in Caroni. I know that we have, some work being done with BP in terms of the solar aspect of things, because British Petroleum is no longer British Petroleum. It's actually beyond petroleum. So they're actually going into renewables themselves. So it's interesting now that, after COP, that our government did reach out and start looking at these different strategies. Now, I'm not a renewable energy specialist, but just from my limited knowledge of it, I know that we have areas like, for example, on our coastline, that wind energy is a potential. We have so much solar in Trinidad. Our days are so hot. And of course, it is because of our reduction in tree cover. So it is just that we have to do proper assessments, because remember, those things also have their own footprint. You're going to have birds being affected by wind. You're going to have large areas having to be cleared for the solar if it is that we're not using it implemented on people's roofs.
Yeah.
It is a lot to do, but we do have the capacity in Trinidad and the business mindsets to get it done.
All right, there's much more that we can talk about. There's a wide canvas to be painted on in this question. But Katrina Khan Roberts, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, the Matrina Marine Minded Network. We'll come back and talk some more about what you do in that particular sphere of activity. But thank you very much. Well, that's our broadcast for this morning. We want to thank you for watching, and we tell you can stay with us here all the time and send your emails to amprime@wesncc. Let me just tell you that the guys will come in at the top of the hour. We have news at 8 o'clock again, followed by today's edition of Talking Point, which aren't small. But for now, thanks for watching. I'm Andy Johnson. We'll see you tomorrow.